One core memory that I have from when I used to live in Turkey was the importance national holidays held for students. Every year, our classes would put on performances where students read poems, sang songs, performed traditional dances, and more. During our preparation for these performances, there was one position that also got to play behind the scenes, the leader. Chosen in a classroom, buzzing with whispered guesses, scraping chairs, and my stomach tightening as I wondered whether if I'd ever be brave enough to step into that role. The leader stood in front of the classroom besides the teacher during rehearsals. And most of the time, the person who was chosen as the leader was the same person who was also going to be reciting the poems. It was the most visible role, and to me, it felt like the most important one. There was this one girl who almost always got chosen. She was a very confident person and never hesitated when she spoke. I remember thinking to myself that I wanted to be just like her one day. I really wanted to have the position that she had, but specifically this one time in 4th grade, I really wanted to read a poem for National Children's Day. However, once again, after tryouts, with her confident voice and her proud stance, she was the one that got the role, not me. I was very jealous, not because I didn't think she deserved the position, but because I wanted to be perceived the same way she was. Going home that day, I remember thinking to myself that leadership must be about being outspoken, about being confident and heard. And since I thought that I didn't fit any of those criteria, I assumed that leadership was just not for me. That idea followed me for a very long time. My own thoughts left me behind and made me believe that I was never able to truly lead. Even though that moment didn't seem as important to me at the time, the belief it created stayed with me. Somewhere along the way, I learned to relate leadership with being the first person to speak and being the loudest person to speak. And without noticing, I carried that mindset with me into every setting I stepped into afterwards. When I started to get involved in more serious extracurriculars, I was finally able to see that negative mindset come into play and see how it impacted me. At one of our meetings for a club, we were organizing an event to raise money for earthquake victims in Turkey. When the officers started to ask for volunteers, people started to raise their hands almost immediately. In a moment of doubt, someone called for decorations, the job that I initially wanted. I told myself that it's okay, because I can always just call for another job. But as I was busy thinking about how I wanted to put myself out there, every spot was already taken. I wanted to volunteer, but I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to help, but because suddenly speaking up in front of everyone felt much harder than it should have. Next thing I knew, everyone had moved on and I had stayed silent. While all my friends were able to proudly contribute to a great cause, I had let fear take hold of me. I left that meeting feeling very frustrated with myself. It's not that I didn't want to help, I did. But for some reason, I didn't think that I fit into the criteria of a leader that I thought I was supposed to be. So for the following meetings, to not feel like that again, I tried to force it. I tried to make unnecessary conversations with the people next to me, share ideas that I wasn't even confident in the first place, and to act like someone louder than I really am. But in the end, my words ended up sounding awkward and rushed, and I would leave those meetings feeling even more out of place. So for the following meetings, I started to focus more on the quiet people, rather than the people who I had claimed as leaders in my head. They were the ones who stayed after meetings to help clean up. They were the ones who helped fix small problems that no one else even noticed, and they checked on people quietly. That's when it hit me. Leadership was never about speaking. It was more so about showing up in ways that weren't flashy or obvious. It was never about being the center of attention. It was about being useful. And once I realized that, my idea of leadership completely changed. I stopped trying to sound a certain way when speaking, and I stopped trying to fill space in a room. Instead, I started to contribute in ways where I felt the most effective and the confident in. I started to stay after meetings, I started to pitch in new ideas in private, and tried my best to help other members when they seemed lost. And when I started to notice the people around me, I realized how many people don't see their own impact. They think that they can't be leaders just because they're not loud or outgoing, just like my fourth grade self, but who believed that leadership only belonged to the person with the confident voice out front. She did not understand yet that leadership could be quiet, steady, and just as meaningful. Sometimes it is the work that happens behind the scenes that makes all the difference. And if more people understood the impact that they already have, so many of us would stop underestimating our own influence. To me, leadership does not mean to be the loudest voice in the room. It means to show up in ways that matter, even if only a few people notice it. Thank you.